Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. Matt's escape plan begins as a carefully calculated illusion of control, but as the week of December 29th through January 2nd unfolds, every step he takes only tightens the noose around him, turning what he believes is his grand exit into the most dangerous gamble of his life. Matt Clark, better known under the shadowy alias Mitch Bacall, has always thrived on manipulation, on being 3 moves ahead of everyone else, but this time he is dealing with the Newmans at their most ruthless and united. At the center of the storm is Sienna Bacall, whose fate hangs in the balance as Matt toys with the idea of freedom, revenge, and unfinished business. Nick Newman steps forward with what appears to be an act of desperation mixed with reluctant compromise, a staggering $1 million offer in exchange for Sienna's safe release. On the surface, it looks like Nick is willing to swallow his pride and negotiate with a monster for the sake of saving an innocent life, but beneath that calm exterior is a man who has learned the hard way never to take Matt at his word. Nick urges Matt to stop the vengeful games, to walk away from the Newman family once and for all, to take the money and disappear forever, but Matt hears only opportunity. He doesn't trust the Newmans, never has, never will, and he makes that crystal clear when he demands the money be transferred to an offshore bank account, far beyond Victor Newman's immediate reach. Matt outlines his escape plan with chilling precision. He will leave the country, secure the funds, and only then, only when he is untouchable, will he reveal where Sienna is being held. Even as he lays out this deal, there is a darkness in his eyes that suggests the truth Nick fears most. Matt isn't even sure he intends to keep his end of the bargain. Sienna is leverage, nothing more, a living bargaining chip in a game Matt has no intention of playing fair. Looming over everything is Noah Newman, whose involvement in the tangled web of affairs and betrayals has made him a target in Matt's twisted sense of justice. The question no one dares to ask out loud is whether Matt will allow Noah to keep breathing once all the chaos is settled, or whether Noah's fate is already sealed in Matt's mind. Nick knows better than to believe this ends with a clean getaway. He knows Matt too well, knows that letting him vanish would only mean inviting him back someday, stronger, angrier, and even more dangerous. That's why Nick has no intention of letting Matt truly escape, no matter how convincing the performance must be in the meantime. Every word Nick says, every concession he appears to make, is designed to lull Matt into believing he's winning, because the truth is far more calculated. Matt needs to be stopped permanently, and the only way to do that is to let him think he's getting exactly what he wants. One wrong move could cost Sienna her life, could trigger Matt to act on his most lethal impulses toward Noah, and Nick is painfully aware that he's walking a razor's edge where hesitation or aggression could be equally deadly. Enter Victor Newman, a man who has built an empire on refusing to be pushed around, especially by someone like Matt Clark. Victor has seen men like Matt come and go, con artists, sociopaths, power-hungry manipulators who believe fear makes them untouchable, and he knows the only way to deal with them is to strike decisively and without remorse. Matt may believe he's inflicted irreparable damage on the Newman clan, but Victor sees this moment as an opportunity to end the nightmare once and for all. When Victor and Nick finally sit down to brainstorm, the air crackles with unspoken fury and shared determination. This isn't just about money or leverage, it's about protecting their family, reclaiming control, and making sure Matt never gets another chance to terrorize Genoa City. They begin to plot a final scheme, one that accounts for Matt's paranoia, his need for dominance, and his overconfidence in his own intellect. Victor understands that Matt's greatest weakness is his belief that he's always the smartest person in the room, and Nick knows how to exploit the emotional cracks Matt tries so hard to hide. Together, they construct a plan designed to derail Matt's escape at the last possible moment, when he believes victory is already in hand. Every detail matters, the timing of the transfer, the appearance of compliance, the subtle signals that reassure Matt while secretly boxing him in. As the plot is put into motion, tension escalates with every passing hour. Matt starts to sense that something isn't quite right, but his hunger for freedom and money blinds him to the danger creeping closer. He imagines himself boarding a plane, disappearing into a new identity, leaving the wreckage of Genoa City behind while the Newmans lick their wounds, but he underestimates the depth of their resolve. Victor refuses to let Matt walk away after everything he's done, the lies, the threats, the psychological warfare, the blood he's willing to spill to settle old scores. Nick plays his role perfectly, presenting himself as a man pushed to the brink, willing to pay any price to save Sienna and keep Noah alive, all while trusting his father to handle the final blow. The scheme is risky, possibly catastrophic if exposed too soon, but Victor has never been one to shy away from high-stakes warfare. As Matt's escape plan unravels piece by piece, it becomes clear that the hunter has become the hunted. The offshore account, the supposed exit routes, the carefully staged assurances, all of it is part of a larger trap designed to strip Matt of his power and expose him at his most vulnerable. Genoa City holds its breath as the endgame approaches, knowing that peace can only be restored if Matt is truly finished, not just gone. When Victor and Nick finally spring their trap, they do so with the full weight of the Newman legacy behind them, determined to ensure that Matt Clark's reign of terror ends not with a triumphant escape, but with his ultimate downfall, closing the door on this chapter of chaos and reclaiming their family's future at any cost. Matt's escape plan derailed, Victor and Nick team up on new scheme. The escape plan of Matt Clark, also known as Mitch Bacall, will be foiled. Victor Newman and Nick Newman will team up on a new scheme to hopefully stop Matt permanently, so let's talk about all the drama. Nick will make an offer of $1 million beginning with the week of December 29th to January 2nd, subject to Matt releasing Sienna Bacall in safety. Nick will also push Matt to finally stop playing all these vengeful games with his family and just stay away forever. Naturally, Matt will demand that Nick transfer the funds to an offshore bank account because he does not trust any of the Newmans. Matt will spell out his plan to leave the country, lock in the money, and only then will he reveal Sienna's whereabouts. In reality, Matt won't be sure he's going to keep his end of the bargain regarding Sienna. There's also the matter of Noah Newman and whether Matt will allow him to keep breathing after all the affair chaos. As for Nick, he obviously has no intention of letting Matt vanish. Nick knows Matt well enough to realize he'd probably just come back later to torment them all over again. Nick needs to give Matt the impression that he is getting what he wants in order to stop him permanently. This is a tricky situation since one wrong move could mean the end of Sienna and seal the deal on Matt resuming his fatal Noah goals, too. Nevertheless, Victor isn't someone who lets a guy like Matt push him around. Matt won't get away with all the damage he's inflicted on the Newman clan, so Victor will brainstorm with Nick soon enough. Nick and Victor will work on one final scheme to end this Matt nightmare and finally restore peace in Genoa City. After Victor and Nick do some plotting, they'll put their plot in motion and hope it results in Matt's downfall. As the trap tightens, Matt remains convinced that he is still the puppet master, unaware that every move he makes is now being quietly anticipated and countered by Victor and Nick, who have shifted from reactive desperation to cold, strategic dominance. Matt spends his hours obsessively reviewing exit routes, burner phones, false passports, and contingency plans, replaying every conversation with Nick in his head and convincing himself that the Newmans are too fractured, too emotional, and too afraid to stop him. He tells himself that Victor's age has dulled his edge, that Nick's concern for Sienna has made him reckless, and that fear has finally weakened the family that once ruled Genoa City with iron resolve. Yet what Matt doesn't see is that Victor has deliberately allowed that illusion to fester, encouraging Nick to project just enough vulnerability to reinforce Matt's confidence. Nick continues to press the idea that he only wants this nightmare to end, that he's exhausted, that he's willing to sacrifice money, pride, and even leverage if it means Sienna walks free and Noah lives to see another day. Every plea, every carefully measured outburst, every pause in Nick's voice is designed to keep Matt focused on the prize, the money, the escape, and the fantasy of finally defeating the Newmans on his own terms. Meanwhile, Victor works behind the scenes with ruthless efficiency, pulling strings that Matt doesn't even know exist, quietly mobilizing resources, allies, and surveillance that turn Matt's supposed safe zones into pressure points. The offshore account Matt demanded becomes the very tool Victor intends to use to trace him, box him in, and ultimately strip him of his anonymity. What Matt views as an untraceable lifeline is, in reality, a breadcrumb trail leading straight back to him, and Victor is patient enough to wait for Matt to hang himself with his own arrogance. As the clock ticks down, Matt begins issuing increasingly specific instructions about Sienna's release, dangling just enough hope to keep Nick compliant while withholding the final detail that would guarantee her safety. He enjoys the power too much to let it go easily, savoring the fear he knows is eating away at the Newman family, especially the unspoken terror surrounding Noah. Matt hasn't forgotten Noah's role in the affair chaos, hasn't forgiven the perceived humiliation, and in his darker moments, he contemplates whether letting Noah live would truly satisfy him. That internal debate becomes another weakness Victor and Nick exploit, subtly steering conversations to keep Matt talking, revealing just enough of his mindset to confirm their worst suspicions. Nick realizes with growing clarity that even if Sienna is released, Matt's obsession with Noah may not end, that allowing him to disappear would be a ticking time bomb waiting to detonate months or even years later. This realization hardens Nick's resolve, transforming his fear into something sharper and more dangerous. He begins to speak to Matt with a calm that borders on eerie, a calm that convinces Matt he has already won. Victor notices the shift immediately and knows the moment is approaching when the illusion must collapse. The final scheme hinges on timing, on letting Matt believe the money is secure and the exit is clear, while simultaneously cutting off every real escape route he has. As Matt prepares to leave the country, he experiences a fleeting sense of triumph, imagining the headlines he'll never read, the chaos he'll never witness firsthand, the Newmans left to pick up the pieces without any chance of retribution. He doesn't notice the subtle changes, the delays, the unexplained complications, the unfamiliar names suddenly attached to processes he thought he controlled. When he finally provides what he claims is the last piece of information about Sienna's whereabouts, it triggers a cascade of events Victor has been waiting for, a rapid sequence that turns Matt's confidence into confusion. Nick receives confirmation that Sienna has been found, alive but shaken, and for the first time in weeks, hope cuts through the dread that has been suffocating him. Yet there is no celebration, no relief, because Nick knows this is the most dangerous moment of all. Matt senses the shift almost immediately, the power draining from his grasp as his leverage evaporates, and panic begins to creep in where certainty once lived. He lashes out, issuing threats, hinting darkly at unfinished business with Noah, trying to reclaim the upper hand through fear alone. Victor steps in then, figuratively and strategically, tightening the vice and forcing Matt into a corner he never anticipated. The escape routes close one by one, the offshore account becomes inaccessible, and Matt is confronted with the horrifying realization that the very people he believed he was manipulating have been guiding him toward this moment all along. Genoa City becomes a chessboard where Matt is no longer the player but the final piece being sacrificed to end the game. His anger explodes, his carefully maintained composure shattering as he realizes that Victor Newman has outplayed him in every possible way. Nick, watching the downfall unfold, feels no triumph, only grim satisfaction that the threat to his family is finally being neutralized. The question of Noah's safety still looms, but with Matt's power stripped away, the shadow hanging over Noah begins to lift, replaced by cautious optimism that this chapter of terror may finally be closing. Victor remains unflinching, unmoved by Matt's rage or pleas, determined to see this through to its irreversible conclusion. In the end, Matt's escape plan doesn't just derail, it collapses entirely, buried under the weight of his own greed, obsession, and overconfidence. The Newmans stand united in the aftermath, bruised but unbroken, knowing that peace in Genoa City has been bought at a high cost but secured through strength, strategy, and the refusal to let a man like Matt Clark ever dictate their fate again. In the immediate aftermath of Matt's unraveling, the atmosphere in Genoa City shifts from suffocating dread to a tense, fragile stillness, the kind that settles only when everyone knows the storm has passed but the damage remains painfully visible. Matt refuses to accept defeat at first, spiraling into denial as he scrambles for any remaining advantage, any loose thread he can yank to drag the Newmans back into chaos with him. Cut off from the offshore funds, stripped of his illusion of control, and boxed in by Victor's quiet but relentless maneuvering, Matt lashes out in the only way he knows how, through words meant to wound, threats meant to terrify, and reminders of every secret he still carries. He taunts Nick about Sienna's trauma, hinting that scars like hers never truly heal, and sneers about Noah, suggesting that fear has a long memory and that even if Matt is silenced, the damage he inflicted will echo for years. Nick absorbs every jab with clenched fists and a rigid spine, forcing himself not to react, knowing that Matt feeds on emotional responses and that denying him that satisfaction is another form of victory. Victor, meanwhile, watches with the detached focus of a general surveying a conquered battlefield, already calculating what comes next, already planning how to ensure Matt never again becomes a loose end. For Victor, this is not about revenge, it is about permanence. He has seen too many enemies resurface because mercy was mistaken for closure, and he is determined not to repeat that mistake now. As authorities begin to close in, drawn by the trail Victor deliberately allowed Matt to create, Matt's bravado finally cracks, revealing flashes of fear beneath the rage. He realizes that this is not a temporary setback, not another challenge to outwit, but a full collapse of the world he built on lies, manipulation, and obsession. The thought that Sienna is no longer his shield gnaws at him, and the knowledge that Noah is slipping beyond his reach ignites a fury that borders on madness. Even so, Matt tries one last gambit, attempting to pit father against son by claiming Nick has become just like Victor, cold, ruthless, willing to sacrifice anyone to protect the Newman name. Nick doesn't deny it outright, instead, he acknowledges the truth with a quiet resolve that unsettles Matt far more than anger ever could. He tells Matt that protecting family sometimes means becoming the thing your enemy fears most, and that if Matt thought he could terrorize them forever without consequence, he was always delusional. As Matt is finally taken away, the weight of the ordeal crashes down on Nick all at once, leaving him drained, shaken, and painfully aware of how close they came to losing everything. His first thought is Sienna, and when he finally sees her, alive, safe, but clearly changed, relief mixes with guilt in a way that makes it hard to breathe. She thanks him, but Nick knows gratitude doesn't erase trauma, and he silently vows to do whatever it takes to help her rebuild a sense of safety in a world that suddenly feels unpredictable and cruel. Noah's reunion with his family is quieter, marked by unspoken understanding and the lingering fear that danger could return at any moment. But as the days pass without Matt's shadow looming over him, Noah begins to believe that he might finally be free. Victor observes these reunions from a distance, allowing his family the space to heal while he handles the final, unglamorous work of ensuring Matt's influence is completely eradicated. He ties up loose ends, neutralizes remaining allies, and makes it abundantly clear to anyone tempted to step into Matt's shoes that the Newmans are not prey. Genoa City buzzes with rumors, speculation, and whispered admiration for how Victor and Nick managed to outmaneuver a man who seemed unstoppable, but within the Newman household, there is no celebration, only a sober recognition of how close they came to irreversible loss. Nick struggles with nightmares, replaying moments where a single misstep could have cost Sienna her life or pushed Matt to carry out his threats against Noah, and it takes time for him to trust that the crisis is truly over. Victor, for his part, wrestles with a quieter reckoning, aware that each victory comes with a price and that his willingness to do whatever it takes has shaped his family in ways both protective and painful. Yet he does not regret his choices, believing with unwavering conviction that allowing Matt to escape would have been a far greater sin. As weeks pass, the ripple effects of Matt's downfall continue to spread, forcing long-buried tensions and unresolved guilt to surface within the Newman clan. Conversations once postponed out of fear now demand attention, and relationships strained by secrecy and manipulation begin the slow process of repair. Nick and Victor find themselves at a crossroads, their alliance forged in crisis now needing to evolve into something sustainable, something that doesn't rely solely on shared enemies to hold it together. They talk more honestly than they have in years, acknowledging mistakes, differences, and the reality that their methods, while effective, have consequences that linger long after the threat is gone. For Nick, the ordeal solidifies his understanding of who he is willing to become to protect those he loves, and while that realization unsettles him, it also strengthens his resolve to choose a future defined by vigilance rather than fear. For Victor, watching his son step into a more formidable version of himself is both a point of pride and a sobering reminder of the legacy he is passing down. Genoa City slowly exhales, returning to its familiar rhythm of intrigue, ambition, and quiet power struggles, but the story of Matt Clark becomes a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and back alleys alike, a reminder that challenging the Newmans is never without consequence. Though peace is restored, it is not naive or complacent, it is hard-earned, guarded, and sharpened by experience. In the end, Matt's escape plan doesn't just fail, It becomes the catalyst that reinforces the Newman family's unity, redefines their boundaries, and cements their willingness to stand together against any threat, no matter how cunning or cruel. The nightmare fades into memory, but its lessons endure, ensuring that if darkness ever dares to rise again in Genoa City, it will find the Newmans ready, unyielding, and united in ways Matt Clark could never have anticipated. Even after the dust settles, the shadow of Matt Clark lingers in subtle, unsettling ways, reminding the Newmans that true closure is never as simple as removing the villain from the board. Genoa City may look the same on the surface, but beneath the familiar routines and polished facades, there is a heightened awareness that danger can emerge from obsession just as easily as from power.